She's sneaking her wine. Like she hasn't drunk it on the well anyway.
Before we got started, I'm sorry.
All right. Hi, everyone, and welcome back to another episode for season 2 of BakedHR. I'm Jasmine here with my co-host, Christina. Hi, how are you doing, Christina?
Hey, Jasmine. I'm doing well. How are you?
I'm doing pretty good on this beautiful Sunday.
Okay, I think there is one thing that we need to tell everyone about before we do anything else with this episode.
What is it?
Have you seen that our beloved Christmas cakes are coming to us in the form of ice cream?
Do not tell people this. What? I'm already going to be fighting people when on the day of. Like, what are you doing?
No, none of these people live near us, Jasmine. We're fine.
That's true. Okay, that's fine.
We're fine. We're fine. I do not go to Walmart, but November 1st, I'm going to Walmart, and if they don't have my ice cream, I'm going to be very upset.
I feel like that's a question that we should ask all of our guests. Do you like Christmas tree cakes?
Yes, since we're leading up. So, well, we'll just do it tonight. We have a special guest with us. Kyra, answer the question. Do you like the Little Debbie Christmas tree cakes or not?
I really don't. I mean, not to be crass, but like anything by Little Debbie, my family calls them Little Diabetes. So,
oh, we're fully aware. We're fully aware. You know what? As soon as I asked Kyra, I thought to myself, she is way too much of a foodie to like That
is very true.
Yeah, I'm embarrassed to say, yeah, I'm a little, well, and not only that, I have a friend that literally lives right across the street from us who does baked goods. And so she makes amazing cakes. Mm-hmm. That's where I go. That's my go-to.
Okay, well, in our defense, we don't have that. So we're going to stick to our Little Debbie cakes. Why don't you introduce yourself to our audience for anyone who may not know who you are?
Sure, I'm happy to do that. I'm Kyra Matkovich. People call me Kyra or Kai. I've been in HR for, 20 years now. I have a background in, I've worked just about everything. I've worked small organizations, nonprofit, government, and now I work for a large global publicly traded company, and passionate about leadership and HR. Love to have fun at work. People call me the HR Shenanigator. And also I love wine and dogs and puppies and sometimes people.
Well, cheers.
Cheers. Is that, wait. Is that a straw in your wine?
It is a straw because listen, I keep these teeth whitened. Okay.
Okay.
So I'm not about to undo that. So yeah, that's me.
Excellent.
Jasmine, please take over before we make this an episode about wine and Christmas cakes.
That's a very possible episode. I mean, we are coming up towards holiday season anyway, so I don't see the problem with that. But we wanted to have you on to talk about a few different things. When Christina reminded me that we were going to have this conversation, I was like, oh yeah, what did we say we were going to talk to her about? And then my mind automatically went to benefits, and she was like, no, we're not talking to her about benefits. But
because you are my go-to person when I have, between you and April, like you guys always answer my my health insurance questions. I just don't understand the system, but we'll have you back to talk about that stuff.
Yeah, you don't want me getting on my high horse these days. It gets me all fired up. So, but you keep calling me for all your insurance questions. I'm happy to answer those for you.
Insurance and interior decorating. Oh, that could be an episode too. Okay, sorry, Jasmine.
So tonight, even though there are lots of things, tonight we're going to talk to you about mentorship and leadership. And so wanted to kick us off on the mentorship side of things. And my first question for the night is, why should we be understanding how important mentorship is, especially for HR professionals or HR newbies, as I've called them, or, just range of HR people, especially right now?
Yeah, good question. I'm going to break it down to a really simple answer, and that is we need each other to learn. And I've been through formal education. I've been through countless conferences, sessions, and the most learning that I ever do is through my network of peers and colleagues. And having somebody who's more senior than me kind of walking through this career with me, helping to guide me, sometimes giving me feedback, a lot of coaching, a lot of questions where I have to kind of figure it out. But, you know, especially for a lot of us that started as a department of one, I don't know what we're doing. This is hard. People are hard. You know, they're really complex, and organizations can be really difficult to navigate. And, you know, no matter how many books you read or how many podcasts you listen to, people don't operate like that. You know, you could read one case study and be like, okay, I got this. And you can, you know, execute on textbook, and it will never end the way that it did in the case study. It just doesn't. And so I think it boils down to that relationship and, you know, partnering with somebody who can give you some guidance, kind of like I don't know about what your situation is with your siblings, but it's kind of like having an older brother or older sister kind of saying, don't do what I did. This was a mistake. You can avoid that pothole. Let me help you out there.
Yeah. And a lot of people don't, I mean, we get it, like HR, we understand that we're dealing with people, but I feel like in some ways, a lot of times we forget that at the end of the day, it's a human being that we're affecting, like a person who is going through different things, just like we're going through, you know, different things in life. And the decisions that we make ultimately affect them. And so having someone to have that voice and that conversation with, to make sure that you're making, might not be considered the right decision, but maybe the best decision for all. And having that type of conversation that, you know, you can go to someone and there won't be any judgment towards you. It'll just be a conversation to figure out how you can truly make it better. It's definitely important.
I like that you mentioned like having your network and learning from your network. Obviously, like everyone's heard, who's watching has heard Jasmine and I talk about this every way we can talk about this, because that's kind of how we survive. But also that's sometimes how we thrive. But I think that it is important, especially because you mentioned like being a department of one once in your career, right? I think your network is important because you have to have those people to call on, because sometimes, especially when you're a department of one, you can get pressured by leadership or by the company ownership to do something that maybe doesn't take into consideration what Jasmine was saying, that we're making decisions that actually impact a human being, not just, you know, a dollar amount or a revenue amount. And so it's good to kind of have that network you can call and put it back into that people perspective when everything that's been thrown at you has been like the numbers-based perspective, and you're supposed to find a balance between the two. So I think that that's really great. And I'm all for like using your network and having mentorship, but how do we formalize this internally at our companies? Because think of like, you've got a 10-person HR team, or how can HR like replicate that for the organization itself so that managers are able to really bring up leaders? We see so many instances where it's just like, oh yeah, they're a natural born leader, which I don't subscribe to. I don't believe that at all. You have to practice stuff and you have to learn things. And so I think that HR can really make a difference by formalizing this. Tell us how we formalize it.
Yeah, well, okay. So I don't know, again, that there's a one size fits all answer for this. I mean, I really feel like every organization really needs to think internally about a mentorship program. What is important to the people who are going to be engaging in that at all levels, and whether they're coming into a program like that as a mentor or acting as a mentor, or coming into the program as a mentee. What are we trying to get out of this? I mean, is this really more of an opportunity for career development? Are there specific areas that people want to get mentored in? So for instance, my organization just recently, like in the last year, implemented a mentor program. And this is something that we had been talking about for a long time. There are all kinds of different ways that you can engage in a mentorship relationship outside of an organization. But this is something that we were hearing internally from our employees. And so it was really about, okay, what is it that they are wanting? One of the topics that we're seeing a lot, at least on my end, I can't say about the entire organization, but on my end, people are wanting to be mentored in networking. I mean, sometimes you wouldn't even think about that as something that you could potentially mentor somebody on. Other people want to have some idea about, how do I even do this whole career development thing? I don't even know how to look at my own career. How do I think about my career? I don't know what I want to be when I grow up. Maybe it's about executive presence or presentation, or, I mean, there's a number of different things. And so I think you have to really listen to your employees, because you have to customize it. And so, you know, how do you implement it? Oh my goodness. I think the easiest way is get some feedback from your employees. What is it that they're wanting to get mentored in? B, get a couple of people within the organization that are willing to act as mentors and do a pilot program. It needs to have kind of a finite period. This isn't something that you can realistically do forever after. Like, for instance, Christina, if you and I were to get connected as a mentor and mentee, this couldn't be something that the organization could support for 3 years. You know what I mean? Like, there needs to be clarity on, what are we expecting? What is it that you want as a mentee? What can I offer to you as a mentor? What is that agreement? You know, how frequently are we going to be meeting? I think my personal feeling is that this needs to be driven by the mentee always. You are in the driver's seat of your career, and you have to decide how do you need to be held accountable? And the mentor can help with that. You know, I mean, that's part of that kind of relationship is accountability. And so, you know, if you're going to meet once a month, maybe it's twice a month for a period of time. What is it that you're going to be thinking about? How do you know when you're going to get there? What are your goals for this program? Try it as a pilot. You know, you don't have to overthink it. You know, it's really about connecting people together, and hopefully there's a chemistry there. Sometimes there's not. So you have to have contingencies for that as well, right? To have somebody say, you know, hey, I raised my hand as a mentor. You connect them with somebody and they're like, they're not feeling it, you know, or maybe, you know, it could be, and I've had this actually happen in my world where there were specific things that I wanted to be mentored in, but the person that they connected me to didn't really have the experience that I was looking to learn from. So it wasn't a good match for me, you know what I mean? And so then I had to go back into the program. So I think you have to have all kinds of different contingencies. You have to you think about, how are we going to connect people together? What are those topics going to be? How do we help them form what that agreement's going to be? How are we going to set expectations? What is that period of time? And then it's always going to be, whether it's along the way, which I think is beneficial, or at the end of the program, how are you going to assess whether or not it was successful? You know, did it help? Did it change their behavior? Did it change their thought process? You know, did it provide them with a skill that they didn't necessarily have before? You know, maybe it wasn't like a technical skill, but it's really more that encouragement to continue to try something that's new to you. It feels a little clunky, those types of things. So I think looking through those things, that's really how you implement, but you've got to have buy-in, you know, from mentors. You have to have buy-in from the leadership, and really this is not a program that should cost a lot of money to the organization. And so you don't have to look at like big budget stuff.
Okay. So that's interesting that you use networking as an example, because I think Jasmine and I have joked about this before, because people say, okay, you say to network, but what does that mean? What does that look like? So I totally believe that that is something that people are asking for mentorship for, like totally. But so what I'm hearing is you can't build a program today as an organization and think that you're going to use that same program for 20 years. You need to be willing to be fluid with it and come back and reassess, but have all of these guidelines in place so that if we are matched together, you and I can say, this is not a fit. You can say, this is not a fit. And it's not like this big deal. It's like, okay, we didn't make the right match for each person's abilities and goals up front. So I feel like that would like sidestep like some hurt feelings and some heartache. Because sometimes that, well, like you said at the beginning, people are hard.
Sure.
Sometimes like you have to navigate that kind of stuff as well when you do programs like this.
I think that's that is it. Sorry, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, I think it's more people feeling kind of embarrassed. So I know for me personally, I know, and I've been in the situation where, you know, the mentor has told me, you know, what do you want out of this program? This is, I need you to tell me to lead. And I'm the type of person is, I want you to tell me what I should get out of this program so I can understand where we need to go from here.
Nice.
Yeah. Well, and I think part of that comes down to asking good questions. If you came to me, Jasmine, and said, I want to have a mentor. I don't really know what I'm supposed to be getting out of it. I'm going to have 1,000 questions about, okay, where are you feeling stuck? Are you where you want to be? What is it about where you are that is uncomfortable for you? Or what do you like about it? What are the energy givers? What are the energy suckers? I'm going to have a lot of questions. And then depending on your answers for those things, we're going to start going down a pathway of like, okay, here's what I'm hearing from you. And maybe it's, I'm looking for career growth. And, I've tried, and I'll give you a real life example of this, where I had a mentor who, came to me and was like, I don't know. I just know that what I'm doing, I'm not loving it. I really enjoy it. But it's not fulfilling. And so then it was like, okay, well, what's not fulfilling about it? And then it was, well, because I don't feel like I'm being utilized. Okay, well, let's talk about that. Like, where do you feel like your skills are and how are you being used versus not being used? And then it came down to this place where, as we started going down this pathway, there were some behaviors that were potentially holding him back from where he really needed to be. And it wasn't necessarily something intentional. It wasn't a technical gap or anything like that. But a lot of these things, sometimes it's that interpersonal, you have to be willing to put yourself out there and say, this is what I'm looking for, or this is what's uncomfortable for me, or, here's what I feel like I'm really good at. And I don't feel like I'm given an opportunity. What kind of experiences can you create for me that would give me that kind of exposure? And then sometimes that will lead to a conversation with your manager or your leader about, well, here's a skill gap, here's specifically something that I'm seeing that is potentially holding you back. So let's work on that, and then we can keep you moving forward.
I really love that. So you talked about all of these things that a mentor should be able to ask you and lead you and guide you with, but how do you think people should determine if they truly are ready to take on the responsibility of being a mentor to someone?
I mean, gosh, time, if you're not going to be committed to this, then don't do it. I think when it comes down to any other topic, that's part of that negotiation about who's going to be the right match for you. I wouldn't be able to mentor everybody. You know what I mean? Like, there's going to be topics where I'm like, I'm not really an expert in that area, so I don't know that I have anything to offer you in that way. But more than anything, it has to be a time commitment. You have to be willing to meet regularly, treat it as a priority, protect that time, because, and you've probably had this happen in organizations that you've worked with where you had, one-on-ones with a leader or somebody, and something kept coming up and it got canceled and rescheduled over and over again. How did that make you feel, right? In the end, that made you feel like, okay, well, clearly I'm a second thought. Like, this is not a priority for that person. And, you know, that's not going to lead to a good long-term, you know, kind of relationship. So I think first and foremost, you have to be committed to the time, whatever that is. You know, you have to say, I can commit an hour every month, then commit to an hour every month. But also knowing that may be an additional period of time, you know, an hour or two every month that you have to do to help with maybe research or finding some other resources or something where, you know, you're providing something more than just kind of a verbal guidance. Again, I think it depends on what that mentor-mentee relationship looks like. But that time commitment, that's got to be the number one thing. And honestly, if it's beyond anything other than time, I think anybody can mentor anybody else. You don't have to have 20 years of experience to be a mentor. You know, I think that, and we see this in like the HR young professionals, you know, coming up. We've got people who are still in college getting mentored by somebody who maybe only has a year of experience outside of college. That could be a mentor relationship as well. They don't have to have a ton of experience in order to do that. Really what you're doing is just sharing, you know, your experience. And I think that learning relationship between the two, both sides get something out of that.
That's so funny, because the first time like someone recommended me to be a mentor, like within our local group, I was like, no, I don't have enough experience. And so like the way they built our program, though, they are looking for people with like 10 years of experience to be a mentor to anyone. And so like, I don't know. I mean, I kind of now believe what you said, but like at the time I was like, no, I don't have enough experience. And then like my friend Michelle was on the other side of me and she nudged me and she was like, you're at 10 years of experience now. I know you don't feel like you're that old, but you're at 10 years of experience now. You should be a mentor. And I was like, no. And I didn't do it formally through that program. But I kind of like, before I started being a mentor in any capacity, I was like, oh yeah, you've got to have more experience than I have. Cause you know, I'm just winging it. Like my whole life, I'm just winging it every day. I don't know what I'm doing, but it's interesting that you think like a year of experience is enough to mentor like a college student. Maybe that is right. And like, to me, when I hear mentor, I think, oh, that's my lifelong mentor. Cause I have some mentors in my life who I know are lifelong mentors, but kind of go back to what you said earlier. If there's like okay, we're going to be paired together for, 14 months, learn the things, and then come back and we'll reassess what your needs are there and maybe match you up with another mentor or whatever it is with the program. So this is all really great. We told you, we are here to learn from you tonight.
Honestly, I feel like a mentorship relationship could be even less than that. I mean, our program internally is 6 months formally. Oh. And it can go beyond that if you want to. But again, I think it really depends on what is that relationship and is that something that they would choose to do beyond that? They could be learning something. And again, it's going to come down to skill. I mean, let's use networking as a perfect example. We know people in our network who are phenomenal at networking, and they may not have been doing it for 30 years. Maybe they've only been doing it for 5 years or whatever, but they cracked the code. Like they got this. Whereas other people, maybe they've been doing their job for 20 some years, but they don't know how to network. And in their mind, they're thinking, well, networking is, I just go to my people when I need a job. And we all know that that's not effective networking, right? And so it's really going to be, it's not about an age. It's not about how many years of experience. I think it really comes down to what is that topic that not only are you really passionate about, but that you found success in, that you can share that knowledge and help guide somebody else.
Okay, so I'm starting to dig the 6 month idea because I'm thinking back to the last time that I was in a position where employees started saying, hey, we want another way you could serve specifically the young professionals. If you watched the episode that dropped on 10/20, then you know what I'm talking about. But that group was like, hey, we want mentors. And I was like, who are you talking to? Go find your own mentor. Because like what you said, like it has to be mentee driven, like an aspect of it has to be mentee driven. So I thought, I'm not going to work on pairing you with somebody when it's your responsibility to like show up, try to get on their calendar, kind of tell them what you're looking for, you know, out of this whole relationship. And so, but now thinking like, if we would have handled that differently, which I always cave. But we could have worked on a way to pair them for maybe 6 months at a time to kind of let them do a learning rotation that made sense for their career goals, and not look at it because I was just so like short-sighted on the fact that it had to be one way, and that one way was a long-term relationship that was going to go with them forever. So why is that the company's responsibility? I can't wrap my arms around that. That's insane. What if it's not a good match? You know, this, that, and the other. So I'm glad we're having all of this conversation. But another pain point I think we have with like mentorship and leadership development is we often see, no matter what your industry is, no matter what size your organization is, we see a lot of people who get promoted up to a management position who get no management training. They were maybe really good at what they were doing, and so they get promoted because they're really good at what they're doing, or maybe it's their amount of time with the company is being awarded, and that's why that happens. But well, first let me say, do you think that HR has a responsibility in kind of connecting these dots so that it's a smoother transition? And if so, how do we kind of help facilitate a way to train managers to being good leaders and good mentors for their people, especially when they're new to a management role and have had no training?
You are asking like the $1 million question. I think every organization has made this mistake. Every organization. There is not a single organization that I have worked for that has not promoted people into a management or leadership position because they were so good at their job, or they'd been there for a while, that this was just the natural next step. And Lord have mercy, we know that that can be disastrous. Oh my God. So the second question, so I think your first question is, does HR have, is HR there to help connect the dots? Oh my God, yes. Now, will the organization listen? Will the leaders listen? Maybe not. But I think it's our responsibility to say, listen, just because they are a phenomenal individual contributor in a technical type of role and they're really, really good at that, it is not an indication of how they're going to be successful as a manager. And I think there's things that we can do to assess that skill. And I also think that there's things that we can do to create an experience for them to start building those skills. But before we even go down that road, I would want to know from that person, is this something that you want to do? We should never be in the business of putting somebody into a people leadership position who doesn't want to be there, because I think that is a really good indication that they're probably not going to be a really good leader. Not necessarily, that is a blanket statement, totally generalized. Certainly there are people who are natural leaders that they don't want to be a people leader because maybe they don't want the responsibility of, ultimately being responsible for somebody else's performance, or like having to do all that coaching and feedback and performance crap, and like, who wants to do that? Maybe they just don't want to do it. You know what I mean? But they're a really good leader. But I think more often than not, people who have a hesitancy to want to be a people leader, it's because they don't want to be a people leader. They're not good at it. Maybe they recognize the fact that, oh man, they're rough around the edges, or, I mean, there could be any number of things. And so I think we need to be really thoughtful when we're working with our leaders who are talking about, hey, let's recognize this person over here because they're doing such a great job in their individual contributor role, and we want to do some reorganization and have all these direct reports in there. And I think we need to say, okay, wait, before we go down that road, let's really, let's talk to the individual to make sure that that's a path that they want to go on. And then B, let's talk about how we're going to assess their skills and where they are. And even if we promote them right away because they indicate, yep, this is something that I want to do, maybe they're not ready for it, but how are we going to provide them support and training and development in order to help them be a good leader? Because reality is every organization is not going to have programs in place, right? Yeah. To promote somebody into a leadership role and, or before they promote somebody into a leadership role, send them through, 8, 9, 12 months of training to become a good leader. And now they're ready for it. They're not necessarily going to be able to do that. So some of these things I think can happen in tandem.
It's funny that you use that as an example, because now, like, every client I have, we talk about, we do a lot of like org design work, succession planning, trying to figure out what are your skills gap currently. And everyone's always like, oh, we've got our eye on this person. We're going to promote this person. Every single time I've had that conversation since going out on my own. And I say, okay, but do you know if they want to manage people? I always get a blank stare, because they're like, it never occurred to me to ask them. So many people just assume that's what people want to do. They want to climb the ladder. They want to be a people manager, without considering that, do we have leadership opportunities where they can have some influence, but maybe not have direct reports, or where they can handle a project, but maybe not long-term performance management. And there have been some times when those clients have gone back to have that conversation that I've asked them to have, and they've come back and said, okay, we didn't know it, but so-and-so doesn't want to be a people manager. What do we do now?
You should just ask them, be like, do you want to be a people manager?
At the end of the day, do any of us want to manage people? Stuff out there right now. But I think that it's so, and I've worked with leaders who are like, we don't have anyone else to put in this role, or, like, why would you ask us this question this far in? But I think it's so valuable to catch it before you give them the responsibility of the direct reports, because that can change so fast, can change the experience that your people have in an organization. So I think if HR takes nothing else out of this conversation, for everyone who's listening to us, like, start asking that question when it's time to talk about promotion paths and, whatever is next for everyone in your organization. Make sure you're asking leadership, do we know they want to manage people? Have we asked them directly? Because it's okay to ask them that question, and it's okay if they say no.
That's exactly right. And I also feel like that's something as an organization we need to consider career pathing. Do we have a path for people to follow that allows them those promotional opportunities into higher level positions, but not have the people leadership responsibilities? I think usually as in an organization, we think, okay, well, if you're going to promote at some point, you have to promote into people leadership. And I feel like that's a fallacy. If that is the only pathway to promotion, to expanding your career, you're forcing people to take on responsibilities and possibly skills that they either have no interest in, or quite frankly, don't have the business to be in. I mean, we all know really bad leaders that, maybe they enjoy being in that role, but oh my God, they should not be in that role. They are so toxic and destructive to the teams and, and ultimately to the business because of the way that they're leading. And so I think we need to be really thoughtful around, okay, well, let's say we go talk to this person and they're not interested in people leadership. What are some of the things that we can put in place that still recognize the contributions that they're bringing to the table, recognize their technical skill, their knowledge, their experience within the organization, the industry, all of these things. Do we have a pathway for them? And what could that potentially look like? And I love what you said earlier, Christina, when you said, maybe there are other projects or things that they could be doing that don't require them to take on that formal leadership responsibility with direct reports, but allows them to lead in other ways, and so whether that's like a core team, or maybe it's a project team, or there's some other kind of project that they could be participating in, and they're leading and they have the ability to be a mentor. I mean, we have people within our organization that I remember when I first started at my job, we had somebody who'd been, with the organization for a long time and came to me and said, I don't want to be a people leader anymore. Like, I don't love this. I'm at my point in my career where I love to train. I love to mentor. I want to guide, but I don't want to be a people leader. You know, what can we do to make this happen? And so we were able to restructure things so that that individual could be a leader, you know, within the organization in more of a mentorship, guiding, support kind of function, but not in a direct people leadership type of role. And it was phenomenal for that individual. I mean, they're thrilled because they get to do the things that they love, and they don't have to do the things they don't love.
There's something to be said for an organization that gives that space for employees to have that conversation, to be able to come to you and say, I'm not really thriving at this. How else can we leverage what I do enjoy and what I do contribute? Because I see this pretty often. I'm sure that y'all do too, but where leadership just, you know, they sit over here and they have this plan and they know what needs to be done, and they know how they would get it done, but they don't really consider what are the other ways we can do this that actually leverages the skill sets of the people we have, so that they're still doing work they enjoy, that we're not boxing them into something that they feel like they have to do. Or, you know, I do feel like a lot of times if we just have that communication, we can find a win-win scenario that maybe doesn't look like what we've thought about in our head that we think that success for the organization looks like. So sometimes I think HR's job is just to kind of nudge the ability to have communication.
I agree. I think getting really skilled at asking questions, you know, even asking the why kind of question, you know, why do you feel that individual should be promoted into a people leadership position? You know, what skills have you observed that they are mastering that shows you, you know, that they've been able to demonstrate that that's something that they would be good at. But I think we've got to get assumptions off the table. I think we put the narratives in our head and we think, oh, all this stuff. And it turns out that, you know, a lot of times we're not accurate. You know? So I think it's really, you know, and as leaders in an organization, maybe they are making some assumptions here and there. They have to sometimes in order to make decisions, but, you know, leaders, they want data. They're going to say, okay, well, if you want me to make this decision, what data can you bring to me that's going to show me that this is the right decision? So how is that any different in the way that we're treating promotions? What data can you give me that shows that that's the right thing to do? You know what I mean? So it's kind of asking them the same types of questions. You know, don't you want to make sure that you have the answers to these things before you make a decision like that?
That's good.
Well, I hate to stop the conversation there because you said the word data, and Christina's about to go on a whole tangent because she loves data. But
I know. I'm going to call you later, Kyra. We'll talk more about the data.
Okay.
But so we can make it to BakedHR Live. I want to go ahead and unfortunately end the conversation there. Kyra, this was such a good conversation. First of all, I didn't realize, you know how you have, we've been in this COVID world for so long, and it's been so long since we really seen each other, like, you know, us as HR professionals getting together at conferences and such, that these meetings really made me realize how much I kind of miss y'all.
Oh, I miss seeing you guys in person so much. I have to tell you, I just had the Wisconsin State Conference Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday this past week, and oh man, I mean, it was so good to see people and like hug them and.
Whoa.
I know, Christina. Well, hey, I have to say that I actually feel really honored that when you and I met for the first time, you let me hug you. I know you said that you had to take, you know, have a couple of drinks and.
Right. I get that prescription refilled before conference so I can get some and, you know, a whole bottle of champagne. It's fine, whatever it takes, so that you guys know that I appreciate you. Oh man, but yeah, that's great. You guys got to see each other. We have an in-person event this week that we will be, so not the same week that people are watching this, but it is going to be very, very limited. I don't know what y'all's numbers look like up there, but we've still got COVID everywhere. So it is a very, very small group of people, and we're doing like a hybrid in-person and virtual option. But I am kind of to being back in the room with some of our HR friends.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for joining us tonight, Kyra. We'll definitely have to have you back on for quite a few conversations because this has just been really amazing. And, you know, like I told y'all in the text message, I have my notes here. So again, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
You all make sure that you follow. We will list all of her information that she's willing to share with y'all in the description below. So make sure you also follow us on BakedHR YouTube channel and subscribe to the channel, and then make sure you follow us on BakedHR. At BakedHR on Instagram. And if you have a topic, question, or something that you'd like to see us or hear us discuss, then email us at bakedhr@gmail.com. And until next time, I don't know why I can't talk tonight, but you know, we'll see you later.